Hello, everybody, and welcome to Citi's session today. My name's Emma. I'm part of the talent acquisition team here at Citi. We're really delighted for you to come and join us today and hear our talk on innovation at Citi. We're going to make this as an interactive session as possible. So throughout our talk, please do use the chat feature to start listing out your questions, because we won't just leave questions necessarily to the end. We'll pick them up as they're coming through as well. Before we start, I'm going to introduce Paula, who has kindly agreed to come and speak to us today. Paula is part of our Global Innovations Labs, normally based in our Dublin site, but obviously we're all working remotely at the moment, and is the EMEA head of co-creation. And I'm going to let her explain what that means. But Paula has kindly agreed to come and talk to you today to tell you all about the great things that we do at Citi that you probably won't have heard about because you see us more as the very traditional investment bank, but all of the innovation that's happening behind the scenes and some of the great stuff we're working on. So Paula, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Super. Thank you, Emma. And thank you to everyone who's organising this today. So yeah, from the comfort of my own sitting room, I'm delighted to connect with you guys. And thank you so much for taking the time to learn a little bit more about what we're doing in the global innovation space. So as Emma rightly said there, because we're a bank, there's often a perception that it's a little bit more old fashioned, but things are changing. And there's a reason I've stayed with Citi for 10 years as well, because it's just constantly evolving and it's actually quite an exciting place to work. So I'm just going to start off with sharing some key stats about Citi. So in Citi, it's a global bank, and I work for the TTS section, which stands for Treasury and Trade Solutions. So this is one part. These are products and services for our institutional client group as well. So just so you're aware, so we serve 80% of the world's Fortune Global 500. So we have all the big players, like 80% of them. We have a Citi presence in 98 countries, and we transact in over 140 currencies. So this number really impressed me. So every day we're processing 4 trillion client payments. So the scale we're working at is huge. So I just have a couple of notes because I want to make sure I'm giving you the right details. So as I mentioned, in the ICG group, which is the Institutional Clients Group, we have different services and products we offer clients. In TTS, we do things like cards. So you'd be familiar with credit cards. We do payments and receivables. So helping clients maybe to pay salaries, pay their suppliers. We also do liquidity management services, which is a different way of looking at moving money for the benefit of the client. And then we do channels and enterprise services as well. And then we also do trade, which is a term you might associate with maybe products being shipped and all the various stages about that. So trade is a more manual-based product at the moment. So the good thing about this is we work with a lot of diverse products, which means that we're working on different innovations to help any of these products at the various stages. So as I mentioned, trade is more manual. So we have different innovation techniques to help that. And then we have things like credit cards, which are already quite advanced in that realm. So today, I'd just like to give you an overview of the lab, what we do here, how it's structured, because I know you guys are coming from a STEM background, which is quite diverse. And the good thing about the lab is we don't just hire one type of person or one type of qualification. So I'll talk you through a little bit about that. It might be interesting just to know a little bit about the emerging technology we're focusing on. And for all you tech students out there, you're going to know more about the detail than me, but I can certainly let you know what we're focusing on and how we're applying all this technology and what we're actually looking at as well in terms of new technologies at the moment. I can give a couple of examples about where we have applied these tech internally and externally, because we're always trying to improve the efficiency of the business. We're also trying to, create things for clients as well. And then I was going to let you know about how we stay relevant as a lab. And then I've shared this with Emma, so I can share it with you guys after as well. We've also created a virtual experience that I can share with you after, which is just a self-paced experience where you get a better sense of what we do in the lab. So as Emma mentioned, please ping any questions as we go along, because if I was in front of you, it'd be a lot easier just to interact and, get questions as I'm going along. So I'll be giving the level of detail I think might be useful, but pause if anything needs clarity. I'm happy to help. If you have a question that I don't quite know the answer to, I can certainly send it to Emma after, which she can share with a broader group. So that's the plan for today. I hope it's a useful half an hour. And then we have a couple of minutes as well for even more questions at the end. Okay, so with that in mind, I work for the Global Innovation Lab in TTS. We have 3 primary locations in Dublin, in NAM, so it's based in New York. We're also setting up a new sub-center in Silicon Valley, and we have another large lab in Singapore as well. So even though we're based in 3 different areas, we are very much a global team, and we have similar skills, but Dublin has more centre of excellences at the moment, which I'll go into in a little bit. So we work with TTS, and we are constantly trying to identify opportunities to improve things for the client. So as you may know, in finance, we have many clients and they have needs, and we have products and solutions that may meet their needs. But sometimes they have changing needs that we want to help with. So we use the term co-creation when we identify an opportunity where we can co-create with a client to create something new. And we also have, so we have a lot of skills in the lab, but we also use fintechs to help support us if we need to speed up the execution of something. So in terms of the lab structure, and this is, I suppose, the most interesting part, and maybe where you guys can relate more, especially considering your background, the lab is broken into 3 primary subgroups. So we have the technology group, who are obviously the coders, the doctors, you know, they have a lot of skills. And some of the key areas we focus on in terms of data science will be machine learning, AI, NLP, graph analytics, and now we're putting more of a focus on IoT at the moment. We also have a blockchain center of excellence. So they're the main technologies we're focusing on from that perspective. We also then have what is called an innovation catalyst. So that's the role I fall under. So we're technically the business type person. So my role is to be a central point to understand tech, our tech, what we can do with tech, how we can apply it. And I also need to understand the business to see maybe what is needed from the business. And when I say the business, I mean Citi, but then I also mean client. So basically, I'm a central point. I try and understand everyone's needs and abilities and decode them and help everyone work together. So the term innovation catalyst comes from the fact I'm trying to speed up the innovation. And then we also have design thinkers. So these are the really creative people who would largely be in charge of kind of setting up a workshop. And it's not the logistics of a workshop, it's all the prep work. So maybe the workshop would be to do with the client. So it would be the prep work to understand what is going on with the client and what is happening in their strategy. Have they had a change? Are they merging? Is there an acquisition? Is there just a change in a digital plan? And they set up the workshop to facilitate it in the best way possible for us to reach our end goal. So often before these workshops, we have an idea of what a client's pain point would be. And then myself, the tech team, and the design thinkers would work together as a lab squad. And we work with the client and the business to try and achieve new things. So just so you're aware of my background as well, which is kind of different than you might imagine, because I work in tech now, it's kind of unusual that I have a degree in psychology. So that's my background. I have a degree in psychology and a master's in business. Other people in the lab, like the design thinkers, would have done training in UI, user experience, and there's a whole array of people with totally different backgrounds, which I think is what's really cool about Citi these days, is there's no one model for what type of person would, you know, thrive in this environment and add value. And then the tech team, we have doctors, we have people who have done like so much research on specific areas, like so we have like an NLP expert, and we've broader people who are working on like weather forecasting. And there's such a background in there, which makes it really interesting, because when you come to any conversation, there's no groupthink. There is personalities, there's perspective, and there's a real healthy challenging to try and figure out the best way to create new things for clients. So I focused a little bit on what we're doing from a tech perspective. It might actually be useful just to explain our virtual lab experience at the moment. So previously, before COVID, we would have met clients on nearly every day, if not every second day. So they would come into the lab, we would give them a sense of who we are, what we do, and we try and generate some ideas with them to see how we could progress on some innovation ideas. Obviously, this can't happen at the moment. So we created a virtual lab experience. And in this, which is available for internal groups in Citi, but it's also available for external clients, and I'm happy to share it with you guys as well. So in this virtual experience, you'll get a better sense of who we are, what we do, the emerging technologies, how we co-create with clients, and then some of the case studies as well around fintech partnerships. So it's self-paced. You can go into whatever room suits you. If you're at a point in your college, I know you're in like doing your degrees and your masters. I remember I didn't have a clue where I could go because I couldn't find role models or people with similar backgrounds or similar personality attributes. So if you're at that point in your kind of thought process or your career, I really recommend you go into room 2, which is meet the team. So you'll get a really broad sense of who we are. And they're just 1-minute videos where you'll see what our background is, what we like working on, and what drives us. So I certainly recommend that. Just from a career progression, it's like you get to meet these 30 people without meeting them. So you might just kind of start to resonate, being like, oh, okay, if that person has that background, I didn't know I could go into innovation. So that's just something I recommend you do after. So as I mentioned, data or emerging technology is huge, and it's led by Dr. Prag Sharma, who is the head of this. And I suppose we're trying to lead the way in terms of what we can build in Citi. And we also connect them with fintech partnerships to see if we can't build something at the pace that's needed, due to capacity or skill sets, we go to a fintech. So one project we're working on at the moment, which I can discuss at a high level. So we're trying to get a better sense of how clients feel about us. So we have loads of different ways. We have surveys, we have feedback tools, we have conversations with clients all the time. And sometimes when we have these conversations, we get, okay, maybe a client isn't happy with that part of their journey. Sorry, something popped in there, apologies. So this is the project that we're working on. So they come in and we get a sense of, okay, they said to us on this call that they're not happy with that. So then we'll go and try and come up with a fix. What we're working on at the moment in a project I'm leading is to get a sense of how a client might be feeling before they even tell us. So it's a predictive tool. So for those of you really interested in tech, we basically went out to all the SMEs, which are this subject matter experts. And we asked them, how do you talk to clients? Where do you save the data that, connects with those conversations? How often do you collect that data? And we spent months mining that data, understanding it, labeling it, and trying to extract the kind of columns that we thought were meaningful and could give us good insight into how a client was feeling. We're at the point now of creating models around this that we think will be good predictive indicators that a client might not be happy with us before they even know it. So things like maybe their service inquiries, skyrocket, or they suddenly stop making as many payments as possible. So that is something we're working on. So this project is for internal partners, but with the aim of helping clients externally. So we're using machine learning and NLP primarily for these things. And you can get a better sense of them if you go into that virtual experience as well, just to understand a little bit more. So you can hear from Prague, you can hear from members of his team, just to see exactly what we're using. So it's cool. That's a really interesting project. And what's good and what's bad is it's getting a lot of senior stakeholder visibility. So some projects we have to convince people that they're very useful, while this one, there's such a demand from it, from everybody in TTS, that it's getting a lot of attention. So the pressure's on us to deliver something that will really be useful and can predict that a client may be unhappy with us before they even know they're unhappy with us, so that we can remediate the situation. So that's just one project I'm focusing on at the moment using machine learning and NLP. And it's interesting to see what data we capture, because often, for those of you not familiar with NLP, someone says Happy New Year, you have to start ruling out those things, because it doesn't mean a client's happy. It's just, seasonal, and it happens every January. So there's a lot of work that has to go into really assessing the sentiment of that data that exists there. And as I mentioned, we're also looking at the Internet of Things. So this is something I've only become familiar with in the last couple of months. And we're looking a lot at machine-to-machine payments. And maybe one example I could give you is, so let's say you're renting a car and you want to get the best deal based on your driving experience, your insurance. We're trying to look at the Internet of Things to help certain car companies to make this as efficient as possible. Instead of them being flat fees, or you having to pay with a card or send money, that will be, we'll be helping car companies come up with some kind of payment methodology to support them. So that is something that's very exciting and cutting edge at the moment. So as I mentioned, we do some examples for internal partners, and this is all just to improve how we innovate and how we connect. As I mentioned, trade is very manual, and we're constantly trying to digitize the whole experience. Because there's many stakeholders involved, it can be a multi-part process, but that is something we're working on internally. In terms of externally, this is where it's very exciting. So as I mentioned, we have over 80% of the top Fortune 500 clients. And often they're changing strategy, there's new treasurers involved, and they want to change how they're doing things. So Voyager is one that we did, which got a lot of external credibility as well. It's basically, we have clients who have people in so many countries, and we want to come up with a cross-border payment solution for them. So what's interesting in innovation as well, it's really interesting to try and identify opportunities that can be scalable. So if you solve for a problem in one area, can this be scalable and can it have the benefit in a lot of other ones? So when I joined the bank, I didn't realize how different the regulations were in all the different countries. So just because you identify one solution doesn't mean that the other country may have the same regulations and allow the same things. So these are the kind of the interesting challenges we come across. So when we're talking to clients, we're trying to identify just opportunities that will really help the client, that we can scale up, and that will really use all the skills and knowledge we have from a Citibank perspective as well. So I realize I've been talking there for 15 minutes. Emma, is there any particular question that I will be worth answering at this point that's popped in?
Hi, Paula. I've been responding to a few that have been coming in. We did have one earlier on. Let me just go back to it and find it.
Sure. I was like, I just need to take a sip of water as well, really, to be honest.
Yeah, great. And we did have one question come in that was just asking how agile is the development in the co-creation space?
Oh, yeah, very agile. So we use Jira as a way to project manage, and everyone gets training in this. So it's very agile. That's our whole approach. It's modern, it's flexible, and we're working on 2-week sprints all the time. So it's fast paced, and yeah, for sure. That's whoever asked that question, you're spot on. That is exactly what we're doing there. Perfect. And it has to be. Yeah, it has to be just for the nature of our work, because if we get a new input from a client or a change in strategy or feedback from a certain kind of stakeholder, the old project management approach would not work. We can't say, sorry, we delivered this, you asked for it 6 months ago, if they've told us lots of pieces of information in the interim. So yeah, it's exciting, it's fast paced, it's intense, but that works for me anyway.
Perfect. That was the main question. So guys, keep throwing your questions in. I know a few of them have been about the recruitment process, which I've been responding to directly. So
feel
free to keep them coming in. I'll let you carry on, Paula.
For sure. Yeah. And actually, just Emma, I know you can answer the questions on recruitment, but just for maybe it might be interesting as well. I've been in Citi 10 years and I'm only in innovation since December. So before that, I had a variety of jobs. So that's the good thing about Citi. So if you have, Emma, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is my perspective. If you have a good attitude, the basic skills required, and a real desire to be flexible and grow and learn new things, you can do really well in Citi. It's a really interesting place to work, and it's constantly evolving. And it's not maybe what you might think banking is. So yeah, I would stand over that it's definitely, like, I've had 5 different roles in the 10 years as well. So I've done everything from client servicing to crisis management to communications to learning and development. So you can really explore many different opportunities in the bank. It's not like you come in the olden days and you had a role and then you retired. You can come in now, you can do your basic job and do a fab work. Then you can identify areas that you're all passionate about and make a case to kind of maybe, pursue them more. And then if you're proving yourself, you can absolutely be supported to advance in those areas. So that would just be something from a recruitment. And yeah, Emma, I hope I haven't stood on your toes on that point.
No, I think that's exactly what we agree with you there, Paula. And it's there's 2 great things about Citi. The size of Citi can sometimes be a slight hindrance because of the size of Citi, but from a career perspective, that actually is a huge benefit because there is endless opportunities and this company has to continuously evolve. So if you're ambitious enough and you want to take the opportunities, your career once you're in Citi is kind of unstoppable, because you don't, one of the joys of being in the same company is you're not learning a new company every time you move role, you're just learning the new role. So you have that kind of comfort blanket almost of Citi, but you're getting completely challenged in the new roles that you're doing. It could be a new location. We find that people move quite a lot, and I think that's the great thing about the labs as well. They're in multiple locations, so you'll be working, and Paula, I'm sure this is the same for you. Your team is never based normally where you are. You're working globally most of the days. So I think if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in, Citi is a great place for that. And the bits you don't see are probably the more interesting things that are happening. So things like the Innovation Lab and stuff like that, the bits that get into the press about the deals that we do is obviously the core of Citi in many respects, but there's so much more happening that even I'm learning. When I spoke with Paula this week, I was like, I didn't know half this stuff was happening here at Citi.
Yeah.
It's a big organisation.
And actually, Emma, that's interesting. So you're saying like the deals are the things that get promoted in the press, but as an innovation group, we would have been part of conversations with that client to show them that we're an innovation partner. So yes, maybe we sold them, let's say, a Worldling product, but the conversations behind that is what we're involved with. So we would have done a lot of work with some major clients and said, yes, this is how you do things. We've been analyzing your setup and we have all these skills and we'd like to partner with you to innovate with you over the next 5 years. So some of them are short-term wins where we might just be like improving the efficiency of a project, and other ones are huge. And then as a result, clients go, okay, we want to partner with Citi. They take innovation seriously. They're aware of the fast pace that's changing, in the world. And so yeah, I think you made a good point. Like, we're behind that. We're part of the team behind that. And hopefully when you check out this virtual experience as well, you'll get a better sense of what we do as well.
Yeah. And the link, everybody, is I've posted that in the chat for you all, so you can find that. So it's just citi.me// virtual lab, so you can bring that up as well.
For me, it works best in Chrome. Not that I'm promoting anyone, but that's just all internet providers and search engines are equally valid because everyone's our client. Okay, cool. So as I mentioned, innovation has to happen just within Citi and to help a client, but also it happens directly outside. So how we stay relevant, this is what I think is super interesting. So let's say we identify a pain point with a client. They realize that a lot of their work was manual, and this came up hugely during COVID because clients that were relying on like physical signatures. So let's say we had to make a payment over $1 million. They normally had to go to, like, let's say the top girl in the business, and she had to sign things. With COVID, that opportunity was no longer there. That person was not in the office and they couldn't do it. So for years, we might have been trying to encourage clients to get more digital. They didn't prioritize it before. Then with COVID, the whole nature of working changed. So clients really understood the need for these things. So we got more clients involved that way. So when we have these pain points, we basically analyze it. And as I said, we bring in the design thinkers, we bring in the business people like myself and the tech team, and we have these wonderful co-creation sessions with them where we discover what the problem is, then we define it, we create a POC, and then we deliver something, which is often, I don't know if you've heard the term MVP, so minimum viable product. So that's the 3 stages of co-creation. But when we're doing this, depending on the nature of the client, the speed that is required, we either in-house build it. So we use all the coders and people like myself to kind of put out the user requirements to build it, or we go with our fintechs. So we have fantastic relationships with fintech. So we have someone in the lab who's just in charge of fintech relationships. So we bring her in at early stages with the clients to be like, this is what we've identified as a problem. We can confirm that our products or sales currently don't meet that need. So what's next? Would we like to build a solution, or would we like to buy a solution? If we're trying to buy one, we use Ali and her network to go, okay, we're aware of these 20 fintechs. They can do this, this, and this. What might be a fit for even part of the solution, or what might be a fit for all of the solution? And this is something that I wasn't aware of. So that helps keep us. So even though we're not a fintech, we're using the fast-paced benefits of a fintech. And because often fintechs just focus on one particular area, they're experts. Of course, they're experts. And that's why we use them to basically help us with that. So one, you can check out High Radius, and they helped us with a collections proposal. So collections is when you take money from your clients. And that's a fintech that we've done a lot of work with. So check them out. But that helps us stay relevant. So we own the problem, we own the solution, but we use them and their skills once we verify them as a really beneficial fintech for us to support us with that. So I suppose the last thing I would like to mention is just the culture of the lab. So I've worked in the main operations business as well, which is, well, all of it's demanding, but I find it an interesting way. The lab works in a completely different way. As I mentioned earlier, the skill sets are so diverse in the lab that it makes every conversation totally different. So I find in my experience in more operations, there are more similar people involved in the processes, as a lot of them are regular and then some of them are new. While in the innovation lab, we're constantly trying to challenge things, explore new things. There's really healthy conversations on like everything. It was mind-boggling to me when I joined. It was just a totally different way of working, but it's really healthy. When you have a proposal, you have your support material for it, and then you're constantly kind of, I use the word challenge, but I don't mean that in a negative way, but people are like, but what about this, or why that? So if you ever feel stagnant and want to progress your thoughts, your learnings, how you work, getting involved in innovation is absolutely key. And just to reiterate, the diversity of people in the lab is what makes it so interesting in terms of backgrounds, personalities, our global presence. It really does just make it a super interesting place to work, and we're actually creating results that directly impact clients. So it's exciting in that way. So Emma, that is the broad overview of the lab.
You.
Hope that gave a good insight into kind of who we are, what we do, why we do it, and what's interesting about it. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Perfect. So yeah, everybody, if you've got more questions, please chuck them in. I think Nisha from RMP is going to join us in a second as well to support us with these questions that are coming in. So any more specifically that you want to ask us, please do chuck them in. One of the questions, and it'd be great to pull up, what are the sizes of the regards to people in each of the labs? So someone's asked here, well, how big is the team? Yeah. But what size are the kind of population of the different labs that we have?
Yeah, great question. So in Dublin, it's approximately 30. And I would say it's kind of like it's probably 10 of each kind of subgroup. So it's very well balanced in that respect. We also have project managers as well who don't technically fall under any of those three. But the business people like myself will be the program manager. And then we have project managers helping us kind of connect from that perspective. In America, we have a smaller presence. We have 4 people there. So they have similar roles to me, and they're also in charge of the fintech partnerships due to the fact that they're in America, and there's obviously such a fantastic presence over there. And then Singapore would have a very similar setup to us in Dublin. So we would have similar size labs. And then in New York, it's smaller, but they would use us then for our tech skills. And also just in Dublin, that's where the blockchain center of excellence is. So we lead that from that perspective. And yeah, if you're not familiar with blockchain, definitely read up on it. It is very interesting. It's slow to implement, but the benefits are huge. So that's something that we're working on as well.
Thank you. And here's Nisha's joined us as well now.
Hello, hi. I'm Nisha and I'm from Rate My Placement. I just want to say a huge thank you for sharing all those insights. That's, brilliant. It looks, very innovative. So I've been looking at some of the questions and to start us off, I know you mentioned this a bit, but I just want to understand like Citi's core values and what do you think makes you stand out from other firms?
Yeah, good question. Emma, do you want to take this one or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can definitely kick off this. I think the main values that we, at Citi, the biggest piece for us now is being the best for our clients. This is why we have things like the Innovation Lab, is that we can keep delivering new ideas, bring them up to speed, deliver the best product possible. So everything we're trying to do is always with the mindset of our clients. So even though my role particularly is not client facing, and in a certain respect, I look after our talent acquisition, everything I do is to make sure the best people come into the organization who then serve our clients. So everything ultimately comes down to that. And with that comes we're looking for innovation. I know we're using that word a lot today, but innovative thinkers, but also passionate people who are just generally trying to think differently and bring something new into the organization. I think one of the things I see from a talent acquisition point of view is we already have the Paulers of the world and our CEOs, etc. We're not looking for replicas of those people. We're looking for people to complement those people that work with us. So we're always, whatever your degree background, whatever your education, we kind of are interested to find different people that can join us. And then another big piece that's at Citi now, I'm sure, Paula, you've seen this a lot, is around ethics. We are really passionate about security, making sure that everything we do is above board. We are regularly checked. The communications we receive on that are incredibly important. And it's not in a sense of you're doing anything wrong. It's making sure we're always doing things right. And that again comes back down to the client piece. So if you're, we want people to be open and honest. If they think that things aren't working or things aren't being done properly, that's flagged and that we can address it. So we're very open culture, I think, in that. And I don't know, Paul, if you have any comments on what I just said.
Yeah, no, spot on. I actually did my 2 trainings this morning on anti-money laundering, so I am on top of that. Actually, and Anisha, just to add to that, we also will be like bold. And I use that phrase in terms of the fact that we created the lab in 2009, right? So right after the recession kicked in. So when everyone was pulling back from innovation and nice to have things, we were like, no, this is when it counts. So we needed to invest in the right things in order to kind of, satisfy the needs of the clients, and like now as of 2009, and then for the future as well. So that's where I think we do definitely have an element of being bold and understanding that if we start retracting, then clients will start retracting, and then the knock-on effect. So we had to be the ones to step up to be like, we know you're having this problem. We know that if it's too manual, it's going to take too long and you're going to lose money. So we created a lab. Come talk to us. Let's figure out what's good for you. And then Emma, just to link in with what you said there as well, I am definitely not a typical lab person, just FYI. So so if you don't resonate with me, that's cool, because you're just as welcome. And if you do resonate with me, know that there is places for people like me in all these innovations as well. So yeah, they were like, I worked with people with special needs before I joined Citibank 10 years ago. So I had a totally different background, but my skills were what was needed. My values were what was needed. I held myself to a high standard. I could communicate. I wanted to do a good job. And I was always trying to improve things. So it doesn't matter what your background is once those skills are adaptable. Yeah. Anisha, I know you didn't ask this question, but I remember when I joined Citibank and someone told me that I was responsible for my own career. I couldn't believe it. I was like, are you joking? I was like, no, just say well done and tell me where to go next, because I think that was my old fashioned view. So to anyone going into any employment, whether you come join us in Citi or not, is remember that fact. And it's really empowering, because you're like, okay, cool, I'm doing a good job. Have I let anyone know? How are they meant to, promote me if they don't know these things? So yeah, there's just a life tip you didn't ask for, but it's good to know that before you join and think that people are going to notice. And it's not about going around saying how great you are, but it's just about like getting involved in the right projects, having the right conversations, and letting people know what you're passionate about and what you're delivering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned you came from a psychology degree, was it? And then you got into tech. So yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, so I mean, the options are endless. And I think just to the students that, it doesn't matter what degree background you come from, you can go into different areas and thrive in them. So,
and Anisha, I think where I can apply my psychology so quickly is the fact that I'm the middle person. So I have to have good communication skills. I have to understand tech, decode them. I have to understand the client, decode them. I have to understand business, decode them, come up with a common language that will influence kind of change with all of them. So that's been my benefit. And also understanding, like, having empathy is huge. Yeah. So if people are pushing for things, it's about jumping into their head to be like, why are they pushing for that? Why is that tone being used? What is the blocker? How can I help? So just those broad human skills are actually very useful. And I think that's why I was hired in the lab, to be honest, because for those kind of things, because it does help people work together as a team and actually deliver results that are beneficial then to people as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, you mentioned you've got so many different projects and things you're working on. I mean, maybe you don't have to be so specific, but is there any favorite product or an area that you've worked in that you've really enjoyed?
Yeah, for sure. So the one I referred to earlier about the client sentiment, that has been fascinating because it's affecting. So as I mentioned, we work in TTS, which is Treasury and Trade Solutions. The project we're doing for that is affecting all of TTS. So I know from my previous roles, if I had that information before I talked to a client, I would feel so empowered. So when I go talk to a client, instead of being like, I see you had 3 issues with us last year. If I go to a client and if this project works, I could be like, hey, I'm aware that your account opening in Greece is an issue at the moment. Like, love to help you with that. So you're bringing up your proactive plans with clients. So it's been super exciting because it's across all of the business. We're looking at all the data sets and we're trying to use all the data science techniques that we can possible in order to predict these kind of lists. So that one, from a business perspective, is most interesting. And then I always try to contribute to the culture as well, because I think you can't just say the culture is good or bad. Like, what are you doing to contribute? So again, with the same with your career, the career just doesn't exist. Your culture just doesn't exist. So I created these global shareouts. So because we have 3 labs across the globe, there's sometimes chances that you work, collaboratively on certain projects, but then there's some people who are quite, siloed in their approach. So every month I set up this thing called a global shareout. And I broke it down into projects, personal, and proactivity. So in this hour-and-a-half session, we basically get a sense of like what cool project is happening, either at the early stages or the end stages. I created a template for a personal element to see like, okay, a new person joined in Singapore. I'd love to know more about them. So they just get 30 minutes for themselves. And then proactivity, because we're the lab. We can't say, we have to show what we're proactively doing before a client comes to us as well. So the third section is just about proactivity. So someone might have gone to a seminar and they learned this and this and this, or someone might have read up about IoT before it was popular and they'd come and share it with the group. So that's something I personally feel passionate about because, as I mentioned, you can't just expect a culture to exist. How are you contributing and how is that benefiting other people?
No, absolutely. And do you find a lot of women in like your kind of areas, your position too? And does Citi encourage this as well?
Well, first of all, absolutely, Citi encourages it. Like the diversity efforts are huge, and I mean diversity beyond gender. there definitely is a male domination element still in tech. That's just a fact, but it is slowly encouraging. And I think that's why I'm passionate to talk at these events as well, being like, I'm a girl, I'm here, I'm happy, it's good. But that actually was the biggest change. I moved from operations where like all my managers were women, and not most of my colleagues, but definitely over 50% were women. And now I'm in the lab. So the head of the global labs is a woman. The head of tech is a man. And there's less than 50% of women in tech, but it's constantly increasing, which is exciting. So I think the more role models you see, the more then like people have the kind of brain space to be like, okay, I can go into that. And it's definitely changing. And it's actually exciting to be part of the change. Like even things like people say like, oh yeah, we need to get like the top guy in that business. So like, I'm just constantly being like, or girl, like I'm that person, but like we need to change the kind of the subtleties in order to change the kind of the role models out there as well. So I'm that person who's just trying to kind of, edit the words in that respect, and also speak at these events just to show you that it's, there's a place for you at any table that you want to sit at.
Yeah.
And just to add to what Paul has mentioned, this is not necessarily to do with the tech space as well, but we are going to be the first Wall Street Bank to have a female CEO. So
yes,
that's a big step in the right direction for us. Jane Fraser's joining us. She's already here, but as in she's been working with us for a number of years, takes over in February. And so that is a big direction for this organisation. That will impact us in many ways. Jane's, when you get a new CEO, they're always going to come in with new ideas and things. But it's we are, this city is is a big advocate for diversity, and that does make sure that there's always a level playing field for everybody, opportunity. And we realise there's a lot of our areas that were just underrepresented by not just gender but different diversities. So we do have a lot of mentorship programs and a lot of support, and we have a dedicated team that are there to kind of address this, because a lot of people say, why are you calling out one particular area? But actually we need to spend time on those. We need to give that support, and we have a lot of allies. It's not just women doing this for women, there's men supporting women, and vice versa in all the different pieces. So we're already excited to have Jane take over
Well, no, that's great to hear, and I know a few of the audiences there too. It's great. Yeah.
Oh, good. And actually, Nisha, just to add to that, like in terms of kind of groups that exist, well, in the Dublin lab anyway, in the Dublin side anyway, we have like a City Women group. So I'd be part of the mentoring group there. We have a Pride group. We have a Black Heritage group. We have a Roots group, which is for people who aren't born in Ireland, to discuss their heritages and celebrate. So like we'd have Chinese New Year, and we do, various things like that as well. So they're just the ones I'm aware of. Am I missing one?
Yeah, the others we have, in some places we have a parents network, and we also have a disability network as well. And we have another one is a veterans network for our military service personnel. But one of the great things about Citi is there's always new things coming up, and there's different strands of these networks across the board. Pride is a huge one that's very, very active, and in Northern Ireland particularly has had actual impact on some of the government changes, has been very active in supporting those changes as well. So it's Citi make sure they're very outspoken on what they believe in, and our groups aren't just there as a nice thing, they're there they do make change, they do make as well.
And if there isn't a group that exists that would represent you or your needs, you get all the support to set up a new one. That's how they keep evolving. They just didn't start out, there was like someone identified a need, and then the support was there from a side perspective. But personally as well, from an enjoyment perspective, joining those various groups gives you something outside of yourself. You get to give something, you get to learn, you get to increase your network. So for those of you terrified of networking, like the daunting element, getting involved in those kind of side groups is the quickest way to make friends, to make, someone who's just not on your team, who's not your manager. It's just get involved. You feel good for your soul because you're adding a little something to something. And also just for your enjoyment, you have new people to go for coffees with when we're all allowed to go and do that good stuff.
Yeah, there's some great initiatives there, and the students were to join, I could definitely join all of those. Just a few questions on the placement and graduate programs. I think this is probably more for you, Emma. Could you just give us a bit of insight into those, like what do you offer, and when the applications are open and closed?
Yeah, sure. So we have. I'm going to focus a lot on the technology roles that we have open, but I will cover what for other positions as well. So currently we have a couple of different technology positions open, and one of them is very new to me as well. So I did share the link for it in the chat. So anyone that's interested in this role, I'm still getting my head around it, but it's an enterprise ONT role, which is much more around big data. So we have a new internship that's very focused on. The guy that was presenting it to me was telling me all about it. It sounded fascinating, but I'm not at the my brain isn't as technology driven, so it didn't all stick in my head as much. But that is very focused on big data. So that's something you're interested in. That is definitely a role that I would highly recommend, and it's a part of a global team as well. So we have interns joining globally in that sort of same position. So it's a very big global network. We have our traditional technology internship, which largely supports markets technology. Majority of our roles are either based in London or Belfast, and I think we have a couple of opening up in Dublin too, and that is our 10-week internship that runs from mid-June to the end of August, and that's where we predominantly hire our graduates from. So if you've never done an internship and you're in your second year of university or your final year of university, we strongly recommend going down the internship route. That's where it's best for you to learn if this is the right organisation for you and the right role. But also it's where we pick up our graduates. There have been, for all in technology, we did have some graduate positions still open. So the graduate program did open, which would start in late summer 2021. But there were less positions available for that grad program because most of our interns got those jobs. And just for all of our other positions, so we obviously hire in multiple different business areas, TTS being a big one that we hire into, and there's positions there for Dublin and for London also, and that is our most global, regional opportunity. So we often have vacancies as well in Johannesburg and in Warsaw. And as part of the Treasury and Trade Solutions grad program, you're guaranteed an international rotation. So if you join that team, I think in your second year, you might be placed in Johannesburg or in Warsaw or wherever else there's opportunity. So that's a guaranteed part of that program, and that's the only program that offers that. It's rotational, but again, we're hiring through the internship route. So I did include the link, so citi.me/EMEA. You can find all the information on there. I know someone asked about the recruitment process. Obviously this year it's all virtual, application and CV online. We don't have a covering letter anymore. You're asked some specific questions that you need to answer. The deadline's fast approaching. Our summer internship deadline is the 22nd of November. So do get that in soon if you're planning to apply. If you've already applied and you haven't heard anything yet, please don't be alarmed. The process takes some time because once you have applied, we then screen your application. You're then invited to an online test. So that's not automatic, but that's with Talent Queue, and I will include the links shortly so you can practice that test. And then after that, once you pass the online test, that's when it takes us a long time then to decide who's coming for interviews. So that could be a couple of months in some cases because we have such a big population coming in. But if you do make it through the process, it's first round interviews by telephone, and then your assessment centre is run via the power of Zoom, which is now running the world. So you'll be doing more interviews on there, but all interviews are conducted by the business that you're planning to join as well. And then for any of our first years or anyone graduating in 2023, it's the spring programme. That is open for all business areas. When you apply, you get to pick which area you're interested in. That's where you spend a week with us learning about a different team. Due to the situation, we're planning for that to be a virtual activity. We can't imagine we're going to be allowed to bring 80 people into any office by April. It's just not looking very likely. So we'd rather plan for the worst case scenario. And if anything changes, we'll turn it back into it's actually easier to turn something from virtual to physical than the other way around. So we want to plan for the virtual piece so it can be the best experience possible. So yeah, everything's on there. We are on our booth later this afternoon and again tomorrow. I've got a couple of recruiters and some more technologists and I think someone from markets joining. So more questions, do join us on our booth later as well.
And Emma, can I just add one thing? So if you are UK based, I know a lot of the audience today are. So even though we don't have a TTS lab in the UK, we do have a markets lab. So there are innovation labs for another product called Markets, and one is available in the UK if you weren't at the right stage to be traveling yet. So just keep that in mind.
Oh, well, thank you so much for all of that. That brings us to a close now. So if you do have any specific questions, please head over to Citi's booth, as Emma mentioned. And yes, I just want to say a huge thank you again for your insights.
Thank you.
No problem. Our pleasure. Thanks so much. And have a great day, guys, everyone. Good luck with your careers. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Paula. Thanks, Nisha. Bye.
Bye.